Hi everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to Toylytics, where we take a look at the analytical side of toy collecting. In this video, we're going to look at the Arethyr wave of Mythic Legions action figures and how they've been selling on the secondary market as of the end of the second quarter 2024. Before we move into the analysis, I wanted to give a little update to those of you who are new to the channel. Hopefully we have some new watchers and listeners now. I was just on the Euro Legions podcast this week, episode 75. So thank you to John, Mal, and Rich from the Euro Legions podcast for having me on and talking all about the kinds of analysis I do and the results over the second quarter of 2024 overall. So if there's any new people to the channel after listening to me on Euro Legions, welcome. And if you aren't familiar with Euro Legions, you probably are if you're listening to me. But if you're not, I do recommend definitely following them both on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast tool. So thanks again, guys, and I look forward to hopefully coming back next year to do the same thing and look at how things have changed over the second half of 24 and the beginning of 2025. So looking at the Arethyr wave, just as a little reminder, this was up for pre-order in July of 2019, got delayed a little bit with COVID, and now was available for customers as of early 2021. I think if you look at the Legions fans overall, this is a very well received wave with a lot of figures that people are really interested in getting a hold of for their collection, and I think the prices typically reflect that. So let's see what's been going on. So looking at the overall sales by quarter, you can see that in general, we have maybe a little bit of a drop overall, so 152 sales in quarter two compared with 187 in quarter one, but still holding pretty strong. Arethyr is definitely a pretty significant wave overall. So looking at the figures themselves, you can see that a lot of that stability, comes from Arethyr himself, still selling 25 units. The Red Shield Soldier increased significantly in quarter two. If you're in the know, so to speak, you know that the Red Shield Soldier was part of the Mysteries of Mythos mystery boxes, so he saw a re-release, so a lot more of those became available, and thus a lot more became available in the secondary market. So I'll have another video coming up. I talked about it on Euro Legions, but I'll have another video coming up going specifically into the analysis of the Mysteries of Mythos re-released figures too. Looking at a lot of the others, though, I think a lot of the others have pretty much stayed relatively where they were in the past. Balia is still selling, a reasonable amount, although that's probably expected to come down a little bit once we have the horses that are released in the Necronominus and the especially the Ulcer 6 wave, the Deacon horse, which is basically just a Balius with a whole bunch of stuff on top of him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to his price. I think it'll probably start coming down, but we're still a little bit of ways from those being released. So looking at the count of the sales by month, you can see that Arethyr in general is often the most sold figure per month, kind of averaging somewhere between about 8 and 12 per month. But you can see here the Red Shield Soldier in May was pretty high, and in June as well, due to the Mysteries and Mythos mystery boxes. All right, looking at the average price of these figures, you can see the gray bar represents the average, the blue dot represents the minimum, and the orange dot represents the maximum that these went for. So the 2-pack of Arethyr and Aethon is the highest, average of $258. And again, these are just in quarter two. So these are just prices in quarter two, 2024, to make sure that we're looking at the most recent sales overall. So we have Aethon here as the most expensive single figure, selling for on average $172, although you can see that somebody individually paid $250 or so for him, so pretty significant overpay in that case. Balius also a pretty high price, $126 on average. Arethyr himself averaging $122. So it's kind of interesting to see that Aethon plus Arethyr adds up to just under $300, and the 2-pack is averaging $258. So the 2-pack, from my understanding, I think most other people's understanding, is rarer than the individual figures, of course. But if you wanted both of them, it's actually cheaper to buy the 2-pack, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But sometimes we have this sort of market information asymmetry where not everybody knows what everything is available for. And I guess the ability to just buy an Aethon or to just buy an Arethyr, especially for customs, can be more attractive than buying both of them, or having to buy both of them if you just wanted one. So anyway, kind of interesting. We'd normally expect a 2-pack of figures to sell for less than the figures individually, but again, we know how rare this 2-pack is, so you kind of expect that to be a little higher. Anyway, something to keep an eye on in the future. Magnus still selling really high, about 110 on average. Hadriana selling for just over 100. The giveaway for people who ordered, I think this was within the first hour or something, so this is pretty rare too. The Turtle Shell and Bone Sword, just one sale there overall. The min, max, and average is all the same. Belphegor and Vorthog selling for well above retail, so $75 to $80 for those. Red Shield Soldier still holding strong at about $75 on average. Hellfire Goblin, 84 or 74.50, and Malifar even selling above 70. So everything is selling above $70 when no figure had less than a $50 retail price. So these are definitely getting harder and harder to find for prices close to retail. So you find any of these, even in the ballpark of retail, that's a pretty good price nowadays. Even the Red Demon Wings, right, averaging $50 just for the wings. Highest price $68, lowest price $36, but average $50 just for those demon wings themselves, and even the blue wings selling for just under $30. Looking at these averages over time, though, it's also interesting to kind of see what's going on here. Overall, the average went down a little bit from Q1, but still higher than it was in any quarter of 2023. Looking at them overall, you can see that Aethon is kind of holding steady, although he's holding steady at 2024 prices, much higher than he was in 2023. Arethyr, again, it seems to be increasing in price, so his highest quarterly price ever on average. The 2-pack, again, holding relatively stable, maybe a little higher than it was more recently, but not as high as we have seen. Balius, again, holding pretty steady as well. Belphegor, came down a little bit, but still reasonably high. The Demon Wings, you can see they're, kind of holding steady, although the Red Wing seems to be going up a little bit. Hadriana's at her highest price overall. No hands and feet packs sold in this quarter. And then you have the Hellfire Goblin, kind of holding steady at his price. Magnus higher than ever. Malifar higher than ever as well, right? So he's, you could get him back in third quarter 2023 for just above retail at 50. Now he's 72. Red Shield Soldier came down a little bit from the Mysteries of Mythos, of course, but still above retail. And then you have Vorthog holding pretty steady at 76, although I guess that's the highest that he has been in the recent past. And then let's look at the individual sales here, right? So let's talk about Aethon first. So not a whole lot of sales. Again, looking most recently, not a whole lot of sales here, but we did see some. I know we saw some average prices, I think, being influenced by this really high price here, but you can see that more recently we had one sell for 123 and one sell for 144. So I think that's more reasonable than this real significant overpay, although you can see in first quarter he was consistently going for over $200. So I don't know, it seems like he's come down a little bit. Doesn't look like it, but it seems like overall in the more recent periods of time, the average doesn't show that, but looking at individual sales, it seems like he's come down a little bit. So if you see an Aethon for, I would say, less than, 150, maybe in the 130 to 150 range, that's probably a pretty good price, which is kind of crazy to think, but he's just becoming rarer and rarer. Arethyr himself, we saw the average increasing. Let's see about the individual sales. And you can see that he's, he's pretty hard to get for below 100, right? So looking at quarter 2 or in 2024, you can see there were a few used sales in the $80 to $90 range, but the lowest new one sold in mid-April for $90 or so. Everything else is selling for close to 100 or more, so about $100 to $150. So if you see an Arethyr for that 110 or so, I would say that's probably a pretty good price considering what he's going for more recently. And you could see some people are, in my opinion, really overpaying. 190 here, 185. I think if you held off a little bit, you should be able to get him closer to 110 or 120 in a lot of cases. Looking at the 2-pack, you can see that we did have a lot of 2-pack sales. Again, these seem to have come up at a few of the Legions roadshow events, so more of them have come on the market, but relatively stable as far as prices are concerned. Generally between about $200 on the low end up to about $280 on the high end, except for a few little overpays here. So I'd say generally that range about $240 to $260 I think is kind of the sweet spot for the 2-pack. That's one I do want to track down myself, because I do have the other 2-packs and I'd like to try to complete the collection. Of course, that's the challenge of being a collector. You have that trying to collect everything in a specific subline like that, and can cause you to have to overpay if you want to do that sometimes. Anyway, looking at Balius, you can see that a lot of sales here in the I'd say 130 to 150 range, but then even some sold in the 100 to 130 range as well more recently, although some of those were used. So generally looking about 120 to 150 for a Balius, especially if you want a new one. Again, though, I might recommend that you just wait for some of the newer horses to come out if you want a Balius. Belphegor holding pretty steady, although you can see him increasing in price a little bit over time. This is pretty significant overpay here, but in general he's increasing in price from before. Back in 2023 you could get him pretty consistently for about 60 to 80. Now it looks more like the 80 to 100 is more consistent. Here was a more recent one selling pretty cheaply for $63, relatively close to retail. I would say if you see him for less than 70 now, that's a really good price, but generally you're looking at 80 or 90 for a Belphegor. The Demon Wings, these don't sell all that often, so let's just kind of look at them both together. Here you can see the red ones going, pretty high in some cases, although in Q2 not as high as it sold for in Q1. Somebody paid $79 just for wings, which is really hard to believe. But anyway, you can see just in general, though, in Q2, not a whole lot of sales overall for these. So, but in general, the lowest price is basically, I would say about $36, the lowest price there for the red wings for sure. Red is more valuable than the blue, it seems, on the secondary market. All right, Hadriana, looking at her, you can see that again in general her sort of bottom price is increasing and the top price is increasing as well, right? So before, back in 2023, you could get her pretty consistently for somewhere between $70 and $100. Now it looks like the minimum price here was an $80 one, but looks like 80 to 120. So if you see her for, I would say 90 or less for a Hadriana, that's probably a pretty good price at this point. Not going to bother with the hands and feet because nothing sold this quarter, so let's move on to the Hellfire Goblin. Again, not a whole lot of sales here for the Hellfire Goblin, although I guess, maybe there's some. But you can see that, again, similar prices, or similar trajectory as we've seen with some of the other individual figures. Before, back in 2023, you could get them for a little bit above retail. Now it looks like the lowest price in Q2, other than this used one, was right here, about $70. So you're looking between 70 and 90. I would say if you see them for 70 or less, that's a pretty good price. Looking at Magnus next. You can see here a little bit hard to see because of the pink color, but anyway, any cheap Magnuses, or Magni, if that's the plural, has definitely dried up, right? So the lowest prices here overall in the quarter were around $90 or so. So you're looking at $90 plus, all the way up to about $130 max, $125, $130 max in most cases. So if you see a Magnus for less than $100 at this point, that's probably as good as you're going to do. Malifar, again, similar story, right? Before, back in 2023, you're getting them for a little bit below retail, up to maybe about $60. Now, the cheapest one in this quarter sold for $54, but in general, you're seeing $60 to $80. So similar story for a lot of these figures, that those cheaper sales are drying up. You're not getting them for close to retail anymore. It seems like you're going to have to end up paying, $60, $70, $80 at minimum for a lot of these individual figures, or more in some cases, like Magnus. All right, Red Shield Soldier. So again, we saw some significant price decreases here related to the Mysteries of Mythos. Those were available in people's hands around April 25th, and you can see here right around April 26th is where the price started to decrease. You can see that beforehand he was selling in some cases. Even somebody early April bought him for 140. It seems like a significant overpay at this point, but of course we didn't know what would happen. But right now it seems like a lot of people are trying to get rid of Red Shield Soldiers, somewhere between $65 to $80. So if you want a Red Shield Soldier, seems like this is going to be the best time to get one, especially if you see one for less than $70, because there's so many more on the market now than there were in the past. I'm not going to bother with the turtle shell because only one sold, as we saw, for $100. So let's look at Vorthog to complete everything here. And again, similar story, right? Back in 2023, people were able to get them pretty consistently for $60 to $80. Now in Q2, the cheapest price, here's a used one, of course, for $50. Here's a repackaged one for $65. But above that, again, not a whole lot of sales for Vorthog overall, but above that, the cheapest price was about $79. So you're looking at, about $80 to a little over $90 for Vorthog. So if you see them for less than $80, I would say that's a pretty good price at this point. So that is it for our analysis of the Arethyr wave. Again, pretty common story overall, where a lot of these individual figures are becoming more and more sought after. So generally when that happens and they're harder to get, the prices start to increase, as we've seen, especially related to the lower prices, right? It's very unlikely that a lot of these figures are going to be had, especially new, for close to that $50 retail price anymore. It seems like it's going to be about $70 and up for most of these figures at this point, unless some get version 2s down the line or some get re-released, but we shall see. That is it for this analysis of the Arethyr wave. I hope you enjoyed everything. Please like, subscribe, etc., as everyone says. And let me know if you have any interests as far as analysis that you would like to see, questions that I haven't necessarily looked at in previous videos. I'm happy to take a look at the data if I can. But otherwise, take care, and I'll see you again in the next one.